All right, Broncos country. Welcome back to the Broncos Zone podcast, part of the Elevated Pulse family of podcasts by the fans, for the fans, diehards only. I'm Eric, and tonight joining me, I've got Zach and Coach Cobb. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing great.
Another week closer to the action.
Whew. You
Yes.
from your mouth to God's ears. Let's the NBA wrapped up. I mean, right now I feel like it's actually the World Cup that's getting everybody through.
Totally.
I love watching the World Cup, but man, it makes me just dream of football, the American version of football. But yeah, we've kind of hit the summer lull, right? It's. I hope you're a baseball fan or find another sport.
It is funny to think about like World Cup action, how exciting it is right now. This is kind of like NFL playoffs. It's just like different time of year. If NFL playoffs were in the summer and everyone was outside and we're kind of had like different cities throughout North America, it'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I just had this conversation with my wife earlier tonight. I think there's a lot more people watching this year's World Cup than years past. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that it's in the U.S.
Absolutely. Time zone helps.
Time zones make all the difference in the world, but this is going to sound absolutely crazy. There's been some really good storylines, and I'm not going to try to turn this into a soccer podcast, but it's been pretty fun and entertaining to watch. So I'm not mad that there's going to be 39 straight days of soccer or whatever it shakes out to be. But
Right.
yeah, let's get us closer to football season.
I agree. I'm curious to see how this is all going to turn out. You guys had said about it being in the United States. Curious to see, especially with flag football going to be in the next Olympics and being here in the United States. I wonder how that's going to turn some crowds and get some things going as well. And if it's going to get, bring the fever that World Cup soccer is doing. It'll be interesting to see here coming up in 2028 for sure.
It's a good point. Like, as I think about, obviously, we did the little flag football experiment at the end of the NFL season. I don't know how many people outside of our group really tuned in. Probably under 1 million in the US. I don't know. We'll have to look at the numbers. But think about how all the ex-NFL players were investing heavily in pickleball a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a huge elevation for the sport of flag football. Did they start investing and then getting more media into that? It could be really interesting, both men and women. So it could be a cool accelerant as long as it goes well and it's actually competitive. We need that to have to happen for this to actually work.
Right. It's interesting too, Jim, that you kind of tied it into the Olympics. I think that's a great call out. I mean, this is kind of a nice little test run for the Olympics. It kind of gets everybody's taste buds wet a little bit for bringing on a worldwide crowd, so to say. And if the Olympics are as exciting as the World Cup, which I'm sure they're going to be, it should make for a good month of TV, come a couple years from now. So I don't know, it's a nice thing to look forward to. And you guys mentioned flag football. Not to go off topic here, but I did see an article this week, and I was just trying to pull it up. I can't find it. But we have here in the Front Range one of the best girls flag football players in the entire U.S. She won Gatorade Player of the Year. She's a quarterback at Mountain Vista, which I know that's a sport that's gaining traction, and super popular. I think the NFL obviously had a little bit to do with that, kind of pushing that flag football game, that league that they had. But I thought that was kind of cool when I read that article that we have somebody here in our backyard who, I think she's committed to Nebraska, which that endears her to me. But I think that's pretty cool that we have somebody in our backyard, that's excelling at a sport that's becoming pretty popular.
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see how that works out. The experiment they did, Zach, you'd mentioned about the flag football tournament this summer, and Sean Payton came out and said that there was nobody that was out there playing on the team that beat him that could play in the NFL. And so I'm curious, for guys that might be looking for that opportunity to say, hey, we can bump up there. We're ready to play. Certainly it seems like Coach Payton's got a little bit different take on that. So we'll see how that continues on.
I'll tell you what, I don't want Coach Sean Payton coaching any more flag football. I want him focused on one thing. It's making sure this team is as successful as possible, and we got a legit shot at the Super Bowl. That's all
Absolutely.
I care about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And look, that with the NFL doing flag football, it's kind of like, they tried it once at the Pro Bowl. Until one good player gets a major injury playing it, it'll be fine. As soon as that happens, you're never going to hear about it ever again.
Never.
Yep.
And what it's going to be? ACL, Achilles, something on the fast twitch movement.
Yep.
Yeah. And, kind of similar storyline, talking about, the World Cup. So you've seen all the NFL stadiums that are hosting World Cup games. A lot of them in the U.S. have turf usually, but FIFA has a rule about they don't play on turf. So they all had to put grass in. And it just, you see the price tag that comes with it, right? It's like $500,000 or something, maybe even more, to put turf in. But then when the World Cup tournament's over, they just rip it out and go back to their turf. To me, that's crazy. With all the injuries and everything you see, let's just leave it at grass. Football is a much better product, in my opinion, played on grass than it is on turf.
100%. And thank goodness we've got the Penners.
Yeah,
that twice a year
Yeah.
replace the turf and the turf. Oh my gosh, the sod, and do a real nice job with like an exceptional playing surface for the Broncos.
Yeah. Well, I know.
I've never. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
No, we're good. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, I've never been a fan. I know the kids now, it's all turf. That's all they've ever known, which to me seems really weird. Of course, I played when all fields were grass, and then the turf fields that I played on were absolutely horrible. Cherry Creek is one now. Obviously, they put a lot of money into their program and such, but I remember being on that turf and the soles of my shoes starting to melt because it got so hot during the summer, and being out there and doing 7-on-7 and stuff like that. And I just can't, I don't know, from injury standpoint, things like that. I would love to see him bring grass back. I think the turf is just, I like the speed. I get the speed. I understand that part of it, but there's just something, Eric, like you said, Zach, excuse me, that, grass to me is where it's at. I think that's where it should be.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I don't want to delay too much longer. I know last week we had a show where we didn't quite get through all of our breakdowns that we wanted to do. So we're going to try to get through the first half of our show a little quicker this time so we can really dive into our linebackers. But the linebackers is where the trivia question kind of centers around today. So I'm going to jump into the trivia if you guys don't mind, since we are doing that deep dive into the linebackers. Just going to throw it back to a guy that just practically redefined the what it meant to play the linebacker position in Denver. I'm of course talking about the albino rhino himself, Carl Mecklenburg. Mech, we all know, well, for those that can remember, he was a Swiss Army knife. He played in that 1980s, early 90s defense. He played inside, he played outside, he lined up at defensive end from time to time. Really, he was a guy that could rush the passer from anywhere, and he just terrorized quarterbacks. In fact, Mecklenburg is one of 3 Bronco players in history to record a 4-sack game. He's the only Bronco player to do it twice. The trivia question is, who are the other 2 Broncos in franchise history to pull off a 4-sack game? And I'll tell you what, I'll give you guys extra credit if you can either give me the season or the game. I will tell you, you don't have to go back too far for them, so it should be within memory. And I think both of them were, I won't say memorable moments, but I mean, I guess there are 4-sack games. Those don't happen all the time, so I think people would probably remember.
Okay, so fair to say this is post 2000.
Post 2000, both of them happened post 2000. Yes.
Okay. All right, so that takes a lot of Broncos greats off the table. 4-sack game. What about DJ Williams? Do you have a 4-sack game?
Good guess. DJ Williams, however, did not have a 4-sack game. I'll give you guys a clue. One of them should be, I guess, I won't say obvious, but one of them is it should be a name that should come to you guys right away.
Von Miller.
One of them is Von Miller. Yes.
Okay.
Oof.
It was
Super Bowl season.
It happened in 2018. It was week 7 on a Thursday night against the Cardinals. Earlier that week, Vaughn had made a guarantee that they were going to, I won't use the colorful language that he did, but he in essence said that they were going to kick their behinds. And he backed it up, racking up a 4-sack game. He had 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery against Josh Rosen was the rookie QB. Had the unfortunate introduction to Von Miller.
4 sacks. I'm going to throw out there, Eric, Elvis Dumervil.
Great pull. Elvis Dumervil is the other Bronco to have a 4-sack game. His came in 2009 in week 2 against the Browns. And what made that game notable is it was Josh McDaniels' first home game as a head coach. Brady Quinn was the unlucky quarterback, and it really just kind of kicked off a huge year for Dumervil. He ended up leading the NFL with 17 sacks that season. So, yeah, that's the 3 guys in Broncos history who have recorded 4-sack games.
When we were beat out by the fax machine. That's awesome.
Freaking fax machine.
Tell you what.
I mean, that's still like a league-wide joke, right? Like people still joke about beating the fax machine.
I'm sure every agent uses that as a lesson in the beginning of free agency of what not to do.
Seriously. Hopefully in 2026 we are beyond fax machines at this point in time, but we're probably not, to be honest with you. I'm sure there's still some agents out there who are using dial-up internet and fax machines.
Probably.
Which is kind of crazy. But all right, so that was a good trivia, good poll, Jim, with Dumervil. We're going to jump into some Broncos news. So the last 7 days has been certainly much more quiet than it was the previous 7 days. I don't want to spin the wheels and recap too much. We all know the issues, what's going on with Jonathan Cooper, but we'll talk about him in just a little bit. But we did get to see, we had just kicked off Broncos minicamp last show. So we didn't really get to see the full minicamp play out, but now here we are 7 days later. We saw minicamp play out. We saw Bo Nix return to the field. So that was that was great. I feel like it kind of really, at least for me, it put my mind at ease. Hearing Coach Payton talk about it, hearing Bo Nix talk about it, there's no doubt in my mind he's good to go. He's going to be week 1 starting quarterback. I think we can probably all put that in the bank. But Zach, what were your takeaways? What are your thoughts on Broncos mini camp? Maybe focused on Bo or not Bo?
Yeah, what I love about Bo is he's never too high, he's never too low. But I thought he was spicy, which I like. He's got this kind of new edge going into year 3. I think he poked fun at all of the debacle that was between the media and Sean Payton and Anklegate, and hopefully that's behind us. But the fact that he comes out and says, like, the doctor said that you really haven't been at this level, especially after cleanup of the bone spur in a couple of years, and then he's putting the league on notice and saying, like, I might even be better. I might scramble more. I love that from Bo. And then he also, like, he set his goals. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to be MVP. That's all we can ask from a quarterback. What was wild, I was listening to sports radio today. We were talking about, it was catered around basketball in some of the trades that just happened with Giannis. And then we were comparing that to, like, who would actually be tradable at that level where you give up the farm to go get from a QB perspective. There's like 3 or 4 guys. And then these guys on the show, I'm not going to name the show, basically said, like, I don't think anyone expects Bo to be paid $70 million a year. If he comes out and wins the Super Bowl this year, Bo's backing up the Brinks truck. There's no doubt about that. But I am liking this new version of Bo, and I think he's excited for the first time. I don't know if it's Davis Webb stepping in. I don't know if Sean Payton and him have just even more trust in year 3, but this feels like just a way more confident Bo. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, Jim, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach. I think that if this is giving him the weapons that he's been given, the offensive line did a great job of keeping him clean for the most part. I think, obviously when you have a running quarterback, those guys will get themselves into trouble. It's not necessarily the line that gives up the sack so much as it just not getting where they need to be. Taking that natural progression. I mean, again, we haven't seen a rookie quarterback for the Broncos have this much success, since Elway, to be honest with you. Even though Elway got sat down, had to figure things out a little bit. I think that if Bo takes a next step, if he gets us to the Super Bowl this year, I agree with you. I don't know how you take that quarterback and showing growth every single year and then getting to the top of the heap, that he isn't sitting there commanding one of the best contracts in the NFL that'll take care of him right through. I think that Bo realistically has probably got 2 big contracts, and then I think it goes down from there and we see where he's at. But I think that's really what he's playing for. Is this one is because he's still on a rookie contract. And I think he turns around and pops that. And I think Bo is going to reap the benefits of a lot of good things this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know we have a co-host on this show. He's not here tonight, but we all know Vince. Vince likes to look at things a little bit more skeptical. I've talked to Vince a little bit about Bo Nix, and I think Vince and I were very similar in the stance of, with Bo, we were kind of like more of a, you got to show it. You got to prove it to me. Well, I think over the last 3 years now going, into this season, Bo has shown it to me. He has shown that he is a guy that, deserves to be talked about a little bit more than what he's getting. I get that the national media is just not going to jump on. I don't know whether it's Sean Payton. I don't know what it is. They have it out for the Broncos. They don't like to pick the Broncos. But look, there is no debating his numbers. He's put up statistical numbers that put him in a category really by himself. So look, when it comes to Bo, Zach, you nailed it. I love his spiciness. I think that's not only the attitude that he should be having at this point in time, kind of that joking but not really joking. If you kind of read between the lines, like, hey, I might be better. Yeah, he might well be better, guys, and the NFL should probably take notice of that because he was pretty darn good last year. Up until the ankle injury, you won't be able to convince me otherwise. If Bo Nix is playing in that AFC Championship game, the Broncos make the Super Bowl. There's no doubt.
And we've invested around him.
Yeah.
We talked about it on a couple episodes ago. Like, if receivers catch more balls, Bo's numbers look even better. Yeah. If the running backs actually could figure things out, we didn't go injury riddled with J.K. Dobbins, Bo's even better. So I love it. And we got to think about, like, the superstars we're paying in Denver across all the teams. It's pretty much 2 guys per team. PS2 makes the money on the defense. The quarterback's always going to make the offense. That's just who it is. I think Jalen Waddle or Cortland are probably the highest paid. And then I take that back. It's probably a lineman. But that doesn't last for long. So it's going to be Bo. Now, do I think he should be getting paid like Josh Allen money? No, but Bo has actually gone further in the playoffs than Josh Allen. So that's what his agent's going to come back to. And know the Broncos are going to jump on this earlier and try to get that extension done ASAP. So yes, they set the market, but then there will be, it'll be like Lamar Jackson that sets it right after or something like that.
Right.
Actually, probably be like Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams, but it's going to be coming.
Sure. I was just going to ask, based on where in what the Broncos have done in getting some of these early works done. I know they're working on Jaquan McMillan. They're working on a couple other guys. Do you guys think that they get a contract done before training camp or during training camp, or do you think that they go ahead and they wait it out and do something either mid-season or have to wait until the end of the season?
You're saying for Bo specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that. Look, I'm saying this from Bo's perspective. If I'm Bo, I want to be able to put up one more season of stats to get a bigger contract.
Even if they do not go to the Super Bowl, but he has a super solid season.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Sure. So look, do I think the Broncos might want to get a deal done sooner than later? Probably, because they might save themselves some money. But I don't think that Bo or his agent are going to let that happen. I think they're gonna wait until this year finishes. They'll go into that 5th year and figure it out at that point.
Sure.
All right. Well, we could talk about Bo for, I'm sure we could continue for 25 more minutes on Bo, but there is other drama. We talked last week about Jonathan Cooper. We can kind of close the book on that. We know he was excused from minicamp. 2 recent arrests. We're not going to dive into everything that took place. We're just going to let it kind of play out. But the good news is there are guys who are kind of stepping up in his his absence. So a name we heard over the last week was Q Robinson. 2nd-year edge rusher out of Alabama. So, when you come from Alabama, I don't care what round you get drafted in, there's a little bit of hey, this guy's from Alabama, he can play. So I'm really interested to hear, and I know we're going to talk more about linebackers later in the show, but I'm really interested to hear what you guys, kind of think of Q Robinson. Is he going to be a guy that you think we can maybe count on a little bit more this year?
I think so. And let's look at the pedigree of the players we have right now, especially on the edge. Homegrown guys, Cooper and Benito, kind of slow starts, primarily due to lack of opportunity because we had other people in front of them. This is Q's shot. So I think that the opportunity is there. Will he take it? Yet to be determined. Does he have the skill set? Absolutely. And did they draft him thinking that he could be doing this? Maybe 1 year sooner than they'd like, but I think he's got a real shot here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, in looking at the roster, to look up and down, for Q to be there, like you said, Zach, obviously a little bit sooner than maybe we wanted to, but to look at the guys that are surrounding him, the guys around that linebacker crew, they're all in year 2 and year 3. They're right in that sweet spot. And Q came out really getting a lot of press, a lot of pub last year, and came in. And I think this is he's got a couple guys that are there that have maybe been there another year, earlier longer than he has. But I think this is an opportunity to prove either I belong or, there's going to be somebody else that'll step over the top of them, and maybe we'll have to wait for another year.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Q briefly last week because I knew he was part of the linebacker crew, but his name came up. And if I remember correctly, on limited snaps, I think the stat that I saw was that he got pressure, or he I forget what it exactly was, but I think it was like roughly 33% of the snaps that he played, he was applying pressure on the quarterback. Look, if we can get that type of production at a much higher snap count, I mean, 33% is pretty high, but if we can get, even somewhere around 20% production on, a higher snap count, I think that's a huge victory. And that would certainly solidify his role on the team for sure.
Absolutely.
Another name we heard a lot about coming out of minicamp was Jalen Waddle. From all sounds of it, he sounds like he was super explosive. I get it. It's hard to kind of judge when people aren't wearing pads or helmets, or sometimes people don't go 100% during minicamp. I get it, but when a guy stands out on the field, a guy stands out on the field. That's just how it goes, especially when you're playing at this level. And, when you get that kind of some of the quotes that we heard coming from Bo Nix, giving him high praise, talking about how explosive he is and his ability to make sharp cuts and coming in and out of those cuts at top speed without having to slow down. I think that's really kind of what they're looking for in a number 2. I say that loosely, number 2 wide receiver. He could easily be a number 1 guy, but I think Cortland is still that number 1 guy on this team. But Zach, what's your thoughts? What's your take on Waddle?
Yeah, this is the first time in years where we kind of have a splash wide receiver, someone we're really, really excited to talk about. And it's no diss on Court. Court's been super solid. He's never been super flashy. He's been all reliable. We cannot fault him for that. He's kind of been the typical, prototypical Broncos wide receiver. I put him in a Rod Smith type category. Really, really solid. Waddle is more along the lines of like an Emmanuel Sanders, which I'm really excited for. Personality, but I love that the team is talking about it's different with Waddle in the room. He's setting a new bar, which I think all the players needed. And this hopefully lights up not just the wide receiver room, but all of the offensive side of the football. This should be inspiring the running backs because they're going to have more opportunities. Sure as hell the tight ends wake up and actually make a play. And with Waddle potentially blowing the tops off these defensive backs, it might actually open things up underneath for an Evan Ingram or some of these other tight ends. So I am stoked to see Waddle. I cannot wait to see how he is leveraged as a weapon. But I want to see him in pads. Not that I'm worried, but that's when the shiftiness kind of comes in, the jukes that make some of these D-backs miss. So I'm excited for that.
Jim, what's your thought on just the depth we have at wide receiver right now? I mean, I know we've kind of signed some free agents as well. We brought in a UFL player who, from all accounts, he sounded like he was lighting it up. So that's a really deep wide receiver room right now. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on just the depth, and is there a name maybe on the chopping block that we might be surprised come training camp?
Yeah, as Zach was talking about Waddle and what he brings, that was immediately what came to mind, is to think about, you've got Troy Franklin, you've got Marvin Mims. Marvin has been outspoken. Haven't really heard a lot from Troy, but I, have seen some stuff about Marvin because he's in a contract year, and
He's
this
not
is a
happy.
big opportunity. What's up?
Yeah.
He's not happy.
Yeah, no, he's not. And I think they brought some guys to come in both at receiver, and I think they brought some people in to come in at kick return, punt return, things like that. And I think that I think that's, to be honest with you, I mean, obviously we got to see with the running back situation, but I think the wide receivers, although the linebackers and whatnot will get a lot of they'll get a lot of talk with Cooper as we get in there. But I think this is the hot spot. We talk about Bo and what he's going to bring, and who are going to be those reliable guys. Who are going to be those guys? And how do they use Mims? They started, they used them a lot out of the backfield last year. They did, a lot of swings, a lot of screens, things like that. Is he still that same guy, or is there another guy that's going to pop up there? One of the guys that I was pretty excited about that they drafted was Colby Katzis. I talked about that. They didn't draft him; they picked him up, free agent, if I remember right. I think he has got some talent. I think he's going to take some snaps away. They're really going to find out how much Marvin wants to get in front of the microphone and talk about where he's at, as his role during camp potentially gets taken away from him a little bit. So there's that. To me, that's one of the things going into training camp that I'm most looking forward to see who's going to be that third guy and fourth guy for that matter.
It should be an interesting battle. The Broncos have a history of keeping an undrafted free agent or two on their roster. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe that comes from that wide receiver room this year. We'll see where that how things shake out. But I did want to touch real quickly. I know free agency. There's still some unsigned free agents out there. Anybody kind of pique your guys' interest? There's a long list of guys, but anybody that piques your interest, mainly kind of maybe in that linebacker area, since we're thinking Jonathan Cooper's probably going to face a lengthy suspension.
Well, welcome to Von Watch, day 57. Probably longer than that. It gets more compelling by the day. But I was reading an article a couple days ago. Like, the Broncos are going to have a real decision on their hands with Cooper. The league's going to come down with some punishment. If that's 6-8 games, that sucks for us. The bigger thing, and this, I've got respect for the Penners. I don't want to get into anyone's personal business. It's unfortunate there's legal trouble here. But when you consider Cooper getting arrested for what he got arrested for, and then if you think about Von Miller, Von had some issues with some marijuana back in the day, but he also had domestic violence issues with the mother of his children. I don't know what relationship status they are. It's like if you cut one guy, and yes, Von's been clean for a couple. Clean, I shouldn't even say that, but out of the news for a couple of years. That's a weird, double standard. So, I don't know if the Broncos are willing to go there, which is going to break every Broncos country's fan's heart. But, just kind of the reality that it is. He's also old. He's 38.
Right.
Zach, he looks so good in those workout videos, though.
He looks so good. And his greener pastures hat is very cool. I like that
Yes.
he's staying true to his farming roots.
Absolutely.
I would be all for Vaughn, but I think there's and we could talk more about it as we get to the segment. There's a lot of other good linebackers out in the market. Vaughn brings a special edge that no one else does. Obviously, he was here. He won a Super Bowl. To me, he's at that age where he's playing a DeMarcus Ware type of role, which would be something really, really special. But there's a couple guys out there, too, that could also fill that same gap.
Yeah, you make a really good point with do you cut off your nose to spite your face type of thing. I mean, let's just be frank. The Penners and the leadership team here in Denver, they don't have any tie to Vaughn. I mean, Vaughn was on the Broncos before they got here. So
Right.
it wouldn't. I think the Vaughn pull is really just the fans, right? We're the ones who want to see Vaughn on the team. I don't think that desire is quite as large from the leadership group on this team. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think Vaughn kind of, unfortunately, I think he falls into the Justin Simmons situation. There are times I think Justin could have came in and helped us out a little bit leadership wise. A little bit young, obviously. Hufanga certainly took that torch when he came to us. And so, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that Vaughn would be great. I know we've got a comment out here about Joey Bosa or Von Miller. Looking at what Vaughn did in the sheer time that he had his opportunity, I think between the two, I think that Vaughn is showing better as age has moved on than Joey has. But it's also a matter of how does it work in the scheme, and do we really want a guy that's going to be a situational player when to sit there and look at the defense upside and down? I think we've got a ton of them out there. It's just finding that right fit and who we can sit there. I mean, Vance has got he's got a lot of good choices. He's got a lot of good problems that he has to look at that I think are already on the team, and now it's just a matter of figuring out what those pieces of the puzzle are that he has laid out on the table in front of him.
Yeah, definitely good problems. I think is the right way to say it. Good problems to have. I'd much rather be trying to find an extra piece than a piece that you need. So, but it's actually the perfect segue into the position group that we're breaking down from last year, and that's our linebacking core. Whether that's inside linebackers, edge rushers, outside linebackers, but ultimately that group was the catalyst for Denver's defense last year. I think without question. As a group, they averaged 4 sacks a game. They just wreaked havoc all year, led by obviously the front runners, the Nick Bonitos and Jonathan Coopers. Bonito, I'll just roll through a couple of stats: 46 total tackles, 14 sacks, 54 pressures, earned his second consecutive Pro Bowl nod. And then Jonathan Cooper, 8 sacks, 51 total pressures. 4 passes defended. So overall, I mean, those two guys coming off the edge is a clear 1-2 punch that the rest of the NFL has, had problems dealing with. There's no doubt about it. From your guys' perspective, though, I'm just interested to hear, when we look at what the expectations were coming into last season, just talking about those two guys specifically, we'll dive into the other guys, but just those two guys specifically, what do you think? Where did they land with regards to your expectations? Did they meet your expectations? They exceed your expectations, or did they fall short? I can't imagine they fell short, but maybe your expectations were really high.
Coach, what do you think? Kick you off this time.
I think that between those two guys, I think they definitely exceeded expectations. Wonder if offenses didn't start figuring out Benito a little bit. I thought that as he was going through, I thought he had a chance for to challenge some of those records, some of those sack records, and those are pretty lofty, that's for sure. But I think that he came on and going, he's fifth year now, and looking at where he was going, I would have liked to have seen him gotten a few, to taken a few more, or gotten a few more sacks. Excuse me. I think that in Cooper, Cooper kind of came onto the scene. I think that he benefited a lot from the defensive line and from teams starting to do some things to slow Nick down and do some of that. So from my standpoint, I think they exceeded. It got to a point where I think whether Benito started getting tired or they started figuring out how to block him a little bit more and keep him up, try to shuffle that offense over, I think is what kind of finished out. But as far as those two as a combo, they were lights out to begin with. And obviously playing against the Titans the very first game of the season helped out a ton too, against a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, these guys plus the role players that kind of came in, DeAndre Tillman, Q, Jonah Ellis, because he really was on the edge last year. I thought played incredible as a unit. I'd give him a strong A. Benito has a motor unlike anything else and is a playmaker. And I think we saw that in that terrible game against the Washington Commanders, which we should have kicked their butt on the road, and we just couldn't pull together, but he saved us in overtime. The huge block. It was perfect balance between Benito and Cooper. We were starting to hint a little bit about it with Q Robinson earlier. And I know I'm jumping ahead for next year. That balance of kind of Batman Robin every time, almost every down, worked really, really well. If you don't have that going into this year, it makes me a little nervous because Benito's going to get double teamed. It's just going to happen. When you get 15 sacks, fourth most in the league, you're going to get double teamed. So it's going to create a huge opportunity if Cooper's not playing all the games or whatever. If we do end up getting rid of him, maybe it changes our perception of how we think about the depth players. But for the Broncos coaches, they got to be thinking about, all right, we got to move Jonah Ellis back outside. We'll figure out inside. So that's what I'm starting to think about. But overall, these guys exceeded expectations. I think if we came into the season thinking two guys were going to rack up 22 sacks, and at one point they were on trend to have the most, and absolutely destroy none of us would have said that. They would have had solid seasons, but nothing near what they actually came out with. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I mean, the only thing that concerns me, and Jim, you kind of touched on it a little bit, is it did seem towards the end of the year, Bonito seemed to wear down a little. He's not the biggest guy. He definitely relies on, he's very strong. Don't get me wrong. He's got the bull rush in him. He can, but that's not his main move. His move is his quickness. He's going to beat you off the snap. He's got that incredible bend that Vaughn was kind of famous for, and he can get around guys. His footwork is really, really good. But that's my one concern. And then when you add that to the legal issues that Cooper has, I mean, he's going to miss time this year. There's no doubt about it. So we're going to have to find that Robin to Bonito's Batman, so to say. That's the only thing that kind of worries me going into the season. Am I confident that they can find that guy out of the guys that they have on this roster? I think so. I do think Jonah Ellis is a guy that can come in and get it done. I do think Q Robinson is going to be a guy that is able to come in and get it done. And DeAndre Tillman too. He's another guy. He's another name that I know he played limited snaps last year, but he's a guy that it seemed like when he came in, he was able to get after the quarterback. So I think the Broncos on the edge are really, I mean, there's not a whole lot of teams I would put up there, as just hands down better than the Broncos on the edge. I mean, they're right there at the top when it comes to the depth and the talent that they have on the edge. So I still think, even with Cooper, with his issues, I think that that's still going to be a strong point for this team. Look, Nick Bonito, for periods in time last year, was kind of that, he was talked about as being the leader for NFL Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't get there without, being able to put back-to-back games together. And I think he's still young enough to where he's kind of learning how to do that. And I think this is going to be a year, if all things work out and he's able to stay healthy, I do think that this is going to be a big year for him.
And the boys are going to have to step up because we don't have John Franklin Myers
Yeah.
on the interior side of that line. And we had sacks and it was really productive from that position. So unless you get a gap filled there, which we might get with Onyadam, who finally signed, then it definitely puts the pressure on the edge backs to get after the quarterback and create more of that havoc.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then you kind of switch a little bit and you talk about, our inside linebackers. You got Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad. Both guys were free agents this year. They brought both guys back. I'll be honest with you, that kind of surprised me. I didn't think that they would both be back. I thought it was going to kind of be one or the other. We know that Strnad was really vocal about, the only way he's coming back is if he's a starter. So it sounds like, that he's probably going to get the first shot. And certainly that comes with the signing of a big contract. So he's going to get the first shot. But those two guys, again, they were really productive when they were on the field. I think they're both pretty integral to what, the type of defense that Vance wants to run. We chatted about this a little bit before the show, though. We play in a division that is really loaded with good tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to me, is the scary part. Is I don't know that we have a guy on this team that can really cover the tight end very well. That might have to come from one of our safeties, to be honest with you. I think that's how they're going to have to play it, because it's not going to be the linebacker. If you're throwing, Brock Bowers or Kelsey, I know Kelsey's older, but you're throwing a linebacker on those guys, you're going to get torched more times than not. But I don't know. What's your guys' thoughts on the middle linebackers?
This, unfortunately, is our weakest part of the defense.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about Dre Greenlaw. That was an experiment that we really tried to make work.
Mm-hmm.
It was super high risk, and that didn't pan out.
Yeah.
We weren't going to be able to pay that guy. So that didn't work. I don't think that Singleton and Strnad have what it takes. And so that's and it's no knock on them, but against the tight ends, it's going to be really difficult. I really like Singleton off the field. Dude's a freaking warrior. He's getting older and doesn't have that range that we really want. So that's going to be up to some of these new guys that we drafted and also picked up in undrafted free agency. We'll see if they can kind of fill those gaps.
Would you say, though, that when it comes to expectations from last season, just talking about those two guys, what are your thoughts? Did they meet your expectations?
I think they met them. Outside of Greenlaw, he did not. Strnad, I've always liked Justin Strnad. I'm really glad we brought him back. I didn't think we were not going to bring him back. I thought Singleton, and we probably paid Singleton a little bit more than I would like. But I think both those guys did what they were asked to do, with safety coverage over the top to make them look better than they probably are range-wise. But Strnad filled in real nicely, especially in a backup role. So now we see if he can put all the puzzle pieces together in the starting role. What do you think, though? Were they at your expectation level? Are you still worried about their coverage? I mean, we don't really know what happened on some of those tight end plays where we still get torched. You know, whose fault really was it? What do you guys think?
Yeah, Coach, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, your perspective from a coach's view.
Sure.
I think you probably watched the game maybe a little bit differently than how I watched the game. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Singleton is a hard one for me. I'm not gonna lie. I was a Josie Jewell fan for a period of time. I thought Josie Jewell brought up a meanness, kind of a nastiness when it came to the run. Again, same situation. We can't cover a tight end. That was seen over and over and over again. But that's the thing I put with Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton is that leader. He's that guy. He's, he had, what was it? Set the record for tackles here not too long ago. Like Zach said, he was a warrior. Going through what he did and having and coming back and being able to put together, from a tackle standpoint, some pretty good stats last year. Stranad was a guy, before he got in that starting role, that I kind of saw him as a potential linebacker safety standpoint, and I'm not entirely sure why they haven't put him in some packages with that. I'd like to see him more on that tight end and see what he could do. Again, meeting expectations, yeah, I would say, it'd probably be a B minus from the standpoint that I think against the run, I think against the things that they were asked to do, they did some great things, but too often were we seeing the tight ends go over with Singleton in chase. And I don't think that that is something sustainable going forward. I think that he's a great leader. I think he brings certain nastiness to the team. But I think on any other team, he's definitely not a starter on there.
Yeah, this is a tough one because you guys are right. Me as a fan, I love both of these guys. So it's not that I want to give them a lower grade. I wish they were better. But I have a hard time giving them anything higher than a B. I would say they met expectations. The call out on Dre Greenlaw, I think, is perfect. He did not meet expectations, which I think that kind of lowers the total grade for middle linebacker. This is just the one area on this team. It puzzles me year after year after year. I would love for us to, at some point, identify a middle linebacker in the draft and draft a guy that can cover a tight end. I've been waiting for that moment since it seems like the late 90s. And, there was spurts here and there with, Ian Golds of the world. But, they haven't drafted a linebacker, it seems like, in 10, 15 years that can cover a linebacker. A tight end. So I don't know. That's kind of where I sit with these guys. I don't think my expectations weren't high for them. I think, from what they were asked to do from, a stop the run standpoint, yeah, they played well. They're able to, they make tackles, they do their job when it comes to that part of the game, but leaves a lot to be desired, in an NFL where I don't know the true stat, but I'm guessing they throw the ball probably 60% of the time, if not more. That makes it tough when you got at least, one or two guys out on the defense that you're hoping can stay with the guy that they're covering. That makes it difficult. So
I don't know who's scouting for the Baltimore Ravens, but they know how to pick middle inside linebackers. Pull this up. Obviously, Ray Lewis. No one's going to argue him. Roquan Smith is the linebacker right now. Stud. CJ Mosley. I wanted the Broncos to draft him. That was 2014, 2013 draft, I believe. Stud. Like, all these players just fit the middle linebacker position so well. we have not been able to figure out our identity there.
Yeah.
For 2 decades, it seems like. And we need to do it because the tight ends are going to continue to be modeled more after Brock Bowers. And it's going to be really, really difficult to keep up with them. Unless you got these weird kind of linebacker safety positions. I think Coach Cobb, you bring up a good point with Trinad. He does kind of model in a kind of hybrid role. I'm excited to see the depth pieces, though, that we drafted. I called Red Murdoch early on when we were doing our draft analysis. I'm excited for him, but he's like a fumble machine. I think he can be a stud in run defense. I don't know what he's actually like in pass defense. Now, he's models after like a Khalil Mack, who could kind of do it all. But you got to show up when you got to face these big receivers and big tight ends. That's what I'm going to be really curious to see how we leverage some of those depth pieces really in the middle of the season. I think that's when those guys will really get their opportunities.
Yeah. Coach, we were talking before the show started, and you threw a name out there that, look, this guy's not released yet, and I don't know if he will get released, but there's been kind of rumors floating around with Patrick Queen of the Steelers potentially getting cut. Kind of interested to hear what your thoughts are. All I can say about Patrick Queen is he was a guy who, one of those guys 7 years ago, whenever he got drafted out of LSU, I was kind of standing there saying, hey, Broncos, maybe this is a linebacker we can draft. I don't know. Is he one of those guys, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I sit there and I look at a guy like Patrick Queen and, to what Zach said about the Baltimore Ravens. So this was a guy that came in. The Steelers are looking to make him their centerpiece. He was the big-time linebacker. And, of course, this is a situation that if he does get released, from everything I'm seeing in the rumor, it's about dollars and cents, not really necessarily wearing on talents or anything like that. I think on defense, if we can find that one guy, and Patrick Queen certainly to me has a better pedigree than our guy that we got rid of. From the 49ers. Greenlaw, thank you. That, Greenlaw, looked okay. Looked well in a 49 uniform, never looked comfortable in a Broncos uniform. And I think that Patrick Queen, he's been around Tomlin for a long time. He stood in that long line of excellent Pittsburgh linebackers. And maybe, if that ends up coming our way, that would be great. Of course, going back to, again, Zach pointed out, for Red Murdoch, I'll be honest with you, talking about linebackers and that the Broncos have drafted, he reminds me a little bit of Al Wilson. And if we could get an Al Wilson out of Red Murdoch, boy, we're in good shape. We're really good shape on something like that. And his play reminds me a lot of watching Al when he played for the Broncos.
Yeah, those are some big shoulder pads to fill. Whenever Al Wilson was one of the all-time greats. I don't think you can say his name in Denver without thinking about the hit that he laid on Christian Okoye up the middle, where he just planted him. I think that was on a Monday night, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I mean, look, that's where we are. It's been that long that we've had a middle linebacker that we can talk about, that we're dreaming of Al Wilson. It's not a bad dream, don't get me wrong, but that's how long it's been. So I don't know. From a middle linebacker position, I sure hope I would love it if Red Murdoch turned out to be, half of what Al Wilson was. Then I think that's something that we can start with. That's for sure. But time will tell. I think from a rookie, coming in, that's one of the more difficult positions to pick up. Your head's kind of spinning at just how fast everything is in the NFL, and you're having to learn a playbook as well, and really kind of two playbooks because you're learning the offensive side as it comes at you. But we'll see. It'll be super interesting. But I think this was a really good conversation. Anything you guys, anybody we missed, anybody you guys want to call out that we missed that you thought had a really good year last year that you're excited to see more from this year?
Well, I mean, Drew Sanders. This is a guy that Sean Payton still talks about, and just has gotten riddled by the injury bug. So anything is better than nothing. If he makes some splashes, that could be really interesting. But outside of Q Robinson, I think DeAndre Tillman played real nice last year. I think probably exceeded expectations early on in his career. So I want to see more out of him and see if he can step up, especially if we've got some holes to fill.
Yeah, I would agree with those as I sit there and look at looking at our player roster, looking at some of the inside linebackers. I'm wondering if that might be the spot, in all honesty, other than Strnad, Singleton. Somebody earlier brought up Tarian York, 5'10", 226. Doesn't get me excited. So I kind of wonder a little bit, unless Drew Sanders comes back and starts doing some stuff for us. I wonder if we don't have our inside linebacker on the team yet. I wonder if that's something that might be a free agent look at. But wow, if we could turn around and find that guy that can cover, it's almost like taking Waddle from the offense and finding that guy in defense that can cover, make the defense better than it was last year. That'd be pretty outstanding.
Yeah, it would definitely be outstanding. Again, I talked about it's kind of a good problem to have when you have a top ranked defense. I think the Broncos finished number 3 overall in the NFL last year, and we're essentially being nitpicky, right? We're saying, look, we're looking at something that was really good, and we're picking out the pieces that could have maybe performed a little bit better. I think we're, as Bronco fans, kind of spoiled. It's been a long time, since the defense hasn't been kind of the go-to side of the ball for the Broncos. I know the offense is catching up with Bo, but I still think this year, look, defense wins championships, right? That's what they say. And, that's kind of what we're going to lean on until, maybe, who knows, we get a Matt Stafford-ish type of year from Bo Nix, which, who knows, it could be this year. But
I love it.
Yeah, well, guys, it was a great conversation. Really appreciate your guys' insights as always. For those who are listening and watching, we really appreciate you all. Make sure you're out there, following what we post on all different social medias. Like, follow, comment, give us, the thumbs up. We love to hear you guys' comments. We do get comments on the show. We don't always call them out, but we definitely appreciate those that comment on the show as well. But really, thank you guys all for the time, and we will get back at you next week with, I think we're going to round out next week. Will kind of be the last of the recap of 2025-26, where we'll talk about the defensive backfield. So a little bit more to come with regards to recapping, and then we're moving forward into 2026, 2027. So excited for all of that and what's to come. But guys, we will catch you 7 days from now, same place, same time. Until then, take care.